What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Big Dave, editor-in-chief of the BIZARCAST, weird tales of monsters, magic, and machines. You like us? You want to support what we're doing? Buy books, guys. Yeah, we're coming up. We're coming up on the Yuletide. We're coming up on Christmas. If you order from Amazon, you will get your books on time. On time. So go over to thebizarchives.com and check out our catalog, or you can order directly from us. And if you order from us, if you're in the US of A, you get a cool free bookmark with all your stuff. So check that out, files on Twitter and Telegram at the BIZARCAST, and check out our Substack. Great articles, great content, free ebooks over at the obelisk.substack.com. So with me today, I have a really great guest, a really smart guy, Galaxy Brain Texan. He was in the first issue of the BIZARCAST with Contest of Life and Death. A lot of people love that story there. He has his own book out, which we're going to talk about. And then also he's been published elsewhere. He's in one of the Firstness journals from Imperium Press. He's just he's a guy that's been around, and I'm excited to have him here. Mr. Jim, how we doing?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on here and talk about some of the subjects we are. It's really great to be one-on-one with you this time, Dave.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I think all 5 of our viewers are going to really enjoy this. YouTube throttles me so bad. I have what do I got? Like 4,000 subscribers or there. Everybody tells, dude, I don't even have any idea when you go live. I can't even find you. I just got to click. So YouTube like screws us, but thankfully it gets over on Odyssey. I think we're gonna make the jump over to Odyssey eventually, pretty soon here. But nevertheless, I wouldn't care if there's listeners. I enjoy talking to you, Mr. Jim, and I enjoy picking your brain, and that's exactly what we're going to do tonight. Before we get into all that, I noticed when you came in here, your avatar is one of the androids, one of the antagonist robot race from the animated film Gandahar, which is like cool to me. I bet there's not a whole lot of people that pick that out because it is a little bit obscure now. But for folks that aren't familiar, Gandahar was an animated film. Mr. Jim, when did you see Gandahar, and kind of like, give us your rundown about how you like Gandahar?
So the director of Gandahar, he also directed Fantastic Planet, which I'm a huge fan of as well. It's a similar vibe where it's just entirely bizarre, crazy, different. It's not really replicable on any other medium other than animation, really. And the story that it tells, both in Fantastic Planet and Gandahar, are completely unique. Like you don't really see a story like that anywhere else. And for me, like Gandahar is like all the hype of Avatar is what Gandahar is. What everything that Avatar is, Gandahar isn't. And that's what Avatar should be, is this incredibly bizarre, foreign, alien experience that you really can't even relate to on many levels. And the reason I have one of the machine men, who is the antagonist in the story, against the natural hippy dippy blue aliens who live on Gandahar, or like light green aliens. There's a line that they say where the age of decadence and senseless freedom is over. It's a really poignant line, and it really influenced the way that I approached fiction too, because I might be going on a rant here, but these machine men operate from a computer, an AI from the future. And this AI is not really like what we would think of with modern AI. It's not like a computer. It's more like a massive brain that keeps spreading like a cancer over the face of the planet. And some scientists in the past made it, and it just grows over time to where in the future it basically takes over the entire planet and sends these robots back in time. It's just so I highly encourage everyone to watch it, because it's just so radically different, and it really gets your brain pumping with what fiction could be.
Yeah, I adore Gandahar. I love it. I think it's one of the greatest pieces of Western art that we created in our era. The director you're talking about, I believe his name is René Laloux or something. I can't speak French.
That sounds right.
Yeah. and he did Fantastic Planet, and then obviously there's quite a few artists and stuff from Gandahar that went on to do other, they were involved in other animation projects. But yeah, Gandahar is really, really, truly a fantasy. It is not fantasy proper, as in what we would consider like Lord of the Rings or sword and sorcery or anything like it. It's fantasism. You know what I mean? It's truly fantasism in insofar as it, as you said, it takes us to an alien world that we can't even relate to, right? And it kind of takes all of these ideas that are somewhat familiar to us on Earth, takes them to bizarre extremes, twists them around, mix them up, so you don't even know who really is the good guy and who's the bad guy. Because you, like you said, you got the hippy dippy Gandaharians who are the supposedly the protagonists, but they do a lot of rotten shit and sow their own undoing and have to, and then everything has to do with this prophecy, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant. There's like it's got layers upon layers of meaning, and it's just truly a genius work of fantasy, and I just adore Gandahar. I do understand some people like they just don't get it because it's a little. If you're somebody that's really grounded in like I guess you could say modern art, and your favorite book is like by John Steinbeck or something, you're probably not going to get it. You know what I mean? But
Exactly.
for those of us that like psychedelia and bizarre, colorful, vibrant, out there weirdness, and for those of us out here that like weirdness, Gandahar's for you. It's absolutely brilliant. So anyway, what we wanted to talk about today, Mr. Jim, you on your page on Telegram, your Telegram channel, you put up a really great, very balanced view and sort of a critique, as well as just like an overview of the kind of the ethics and the function of AI art and the direction of artificial intelligence in general. And I just thought it was really great. I know a lot of guys are probably tired of the AI art argument because, like many other things, you just have all of these people that just okay. So for me, I don't really, there are, I have very I have some very foundational beliefs about the world, about spirituality, about the, and those are just concrete, unshakable. Those things don't move. But as far as like these other positions and ideas and current things that pop up and everything, I'm a little bit detached from those things. So it's hard for me to take like an emotional position on these things, right? So I find like people that personalize and internalize and moralize and get emotional over these types of things. I find it exhausting and kind of alien. I very much look at technology. Now, I am a Luddite at heart. Don't get me wrong, but I very much look at these
Completely
things.
agree.
Yeah, I look at these things from a practical praxis, minded kind of way. And I'm gonna let you have the floor here. I feel that you probably have a similar type of thing, just hearing the way that you talk about it and everything like that. So what I want you to do is I want you to sort of recreate your argument. I know you did like a 15-minute or 10-minute minute or whatever. You did a fairly long voice message. So if you don't have the energy to like recreate the whole thing, that's perfectly fine. But if you could give us the gist of your argument for or against or in regards to artificial intelligence and AI art more specifically, go right ahead. Let's hear it.
Okay, so hopefully I'll be able to do it a little bit better this time because the reason it took 15 minutes was because I was kind of rambling. So I'll try to cut more to the point so we can talk about it or talk about some of your views too. Because I noticed you had a post on the exact same day that I did my voice message with AI art. So I want to get into some of that too. But generally, the crux of my argument is that um, I see most of the counter arguments to the AI art. Um, these sort of like you input a prompt and you get a piece of quote unquote art as an output. um, I see most of the arguments against that being that it's demonic or that it is, like what we were just talking about, Luddites. This is technology equals bad or it's demonic. And although I sympathize with those arguments because I think that the core of what they're getting at is, kind of accurate. The overarching
And
tone
to be
of
clear, to let
superiority.
people, I'm sorry to interrupt. You are a religious guy, right? I believe you're a Christian guy, right?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Correct.
I'm
So
sorry. I just
yeah,
wanted to,
I'm
so people don't think you're some materialist.
right. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's the the spirituality part definitely plays into my view, but it's not. I'm not making an overt like spiritual judgment on AI like most people seem to do. Um, I think the core of my argument is that it's not demonic. It's just inhuman. And what I mean by that is that it surpasses human limitations on making value judgments. And the way that we distill those value judgments, it is able to optimize to the point where it's foreign to the way that we would think about things. And I think, especially after having kids, you start to think about how we relate things to one another, how we know that that's a dog, how we know that that's a cat, and it's just through an amalgamation of experiences that we all these instantiated experiences get amalgamated into an impression of some sort of phenomenon that has a name or a term or some sort of signifier. And the philosopher Husserl, he recognized this early on, is that it's not just enough for to say something like "I think, therefore I am," or I am making these thought processes and therefore I'm a person. It's that the very process of thinking is an action. It's not something that's passive. You're constantly relating things to other things. And he called it intentionality, where every thought is being related to something else. It's never just thinking. And when people do this, and I recognize it in my kid, and when people do this, they are making value judgments based off those past experiences. They're pulling this catalog of experiences that's very distilled down to an essence, and they are referencing what they're seeing, what their sensory input is against this impression that they've formulated over their lifetime, and they're making a value judgment about how good it is, or they're making a value judgment about if they need to react or something like that, if that makes sense. And I see what these machine learning algorithms, I see what they do functioning in a almost synonymous way. It's not that they are just pulling these images from the ether. This isn't like a 2001: A Space Odyssey moment where we're like these apes and it's a big black monolith.
Yeah.
It's something much more akin to the way that we think, and it's something much more relatable to the way that we think. It's just that these algorithms are operating on, instead of you know a I don't know if you'd want to quantify it, but like 1,000 data points that we've experienced, that I have experienced in my lifetime, it's operating off of 1 billion data points that it has not only been fed data, but it has also um, been trained on referencing that to real world data. So it's not anything that we don't do, even as artists. It's just that it's doing it at a level that is kind of beyond our ability.
Yeah, this is what
It's
they mean by neural network.
correct. Yeah, exactly. Correct. Yeah, it's relating things together. It's this intentionality that I was talking about. It's the same sort of thing. How you can look at a painting. It's the famous painting of "This is not a pipe." I forget the French, whatever the French is, but it was one of those surrealist paintings. This is not a pipe. It's a painting of a pipe. Yes, but we relate it to a pipe because we've experienced pipes before in our life, and so we know that that's a pipe. It's the same sort of thing. We just do it every day. We don't even realize that we're doing it, and the algorithm is doing it with deliberate intent, trying to get one single product, or one single output based off of input that we give it. So I and I kind of relate this also just in my own way to, there is a sense of ethics or a sense of morality that comes out of that observation. If we're creating value judgments based off of our familiarity with the subject matter, how many times we've experienced a certain phenomenon, what we are able to gauge whether it is good or bad. And that's I mean that's in a lot of ways a platonic thing. Is you try to distill something down to its essence. What characteristic of a dog makes it to where if you define it in that way, you will always get a dog? If you say it's an animal with four legs with hair that has a tail, you might get a cat out of that definition.
Yeah.
But what do you define a dog as that you always get a dog as the output? And what the that's what the machine learning does. It takes an image, it takes one of the training some of the training data that it's been fed into it. It takes these images and it trains on them on breaking them down to like a pixel level and saying, okay, if I take away 90% of these pixels, can I recreate the image? And the people who are programming these algorithms are tweaking it based off of whatever results that they get. They're trying to optimize it themselves, and it's optimizing itself based off of its own experiences. And it's not necessarily a living, breathing thing, but it is getting better. And it more and more gets to the point where it can take less and less input and create more and more refined output. And that is, that's again, to get back to my original point, that's a moral, or that is an ethical thing. And I don't necessarily mean ethics of AI or artificial intelligence, which is a much more like a computer science sort of question. What I more mean is the way that these artificial intelligence machine learning algorithms work is the same way that we approach the world on a day-to-day basis. And if we're approaching it making value judgments, that's an ethical question where we are trying to create good outcomes based off of our familiarity with what a good outcome looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we use AI as a tool, which that's like the biggest dog whistle for someone trying to cram authoritarianism down your throat. But if we use AI as a tool to help us see what an ideal is, because the way that we formulate ideals is to take all these impressions, we think about it, we ruminate, and we say, okay, here's what my life should look like, or here's what a dog should look like. If we could use AI to help us formulate these ideals, to distill things down to their bare essence, I think that would help us, especially as artists, And that's something that a lot of people don't want to hear because they feel like their autonomy is being taken out of the picture, or that um, their input as someone being creative is being taken out of the equation, which just makes it sound even worse. But I do see it as something that, if utilized responsibly, you could use it as a tool. And I myself have used it in that capacity, where I will feed it lines from a novel that I'm writing that's in progress. I'll feed it certain passages, and it will generate images, and I'll be like, I didn't think about that's what it would look like. I wonder if I reword it a little bit differently, or I'll look at the image and I'll be like, oh, I should actually approach it from a different angle because I want it to look more like this or that or whatever. And in many ways, it's an advisory role. It's the problem is that when we start treating artificial intelligence and these machine learning algorithms as authorities rather than advisors, I think that's where the problem is. And I think that, again, as Luddites, we we can already anticipate that that's a foregone conclusion,
Yeah.
especially based off of the people who are coding these algorithms, how how they hate us, and how they're just I'm trying to think of the right word. They're just nerds who are angry at the world and want to exert power over it. So That's kind of my 2 cents. I feel like I'm about to start rambling if I go any further, but that's the gist for sure.
So the last thing that you mentioned about like the people programming it and the people coding it, there's a kind of a problem with these types of people. I think a lot of times guys in our sphere, because a lot of times guys in our sphere are very irrational, despite us, people adjacent to us being like, oh, facts and logic, rationality, blah, blah, blah. We are not rational. We are very emotional. We are very emotional beings, and we have knee-jerk reactions to things, and we follow gut feelings, and that's just who we are, right?
Mhm.
There's been times I've just like thrown ideas out, just being devil's advocate, and I get like really emotional pushback, and I'm like, why? And they react before there's a why. So that's something that's kind of like in our blood. The people that do the coding, we kind of project that on everybody. We just assume everybody has that, right? No, not everybody's like that in our coming from our side of things, but I think that we attribute too much agency to the type of people that do this coding. A lot of times, and I've met people that do programming and coding, and there's all different types. If you find a guy that's a programmer for cool indie games, he's probably going to be a different kind of beast than somebody that does programming for Amazon or something that sits in front of a screen and fixes HTML or JavaScript or whatever all day long. You know what I mean? These are
Yeah.
two different types of whatever. But a lot of times the guys that are in this, that are very driven by this, don't have that type of agency. These are people that are very far on the spectrum of they lean more into autistic traits. They have a lot of autistic traits. So they're not even thinking about the outcomes. They're not even thinking. They're very rigid minded. They're very geared to being being counters. They are effectively themselves in the way that they think. So they're not even like thinking about these kinds of things. And if you present them with these kinds of ideas, not only will they like kind of disregard it and not really like thinking that it's kind of goofy or whatever, they don't even really have the capacity to understand it. You know what I mean? They're not
Yeah.
because they don't have the mental elasticity to you have to be a creative minded person, not necessarily like a painter or musician or whatever, but you have to be a creative thinker to be able to make predictions, right? Now I understand that there's like well, if you have XYZ put the you can do like predictive, like computers can be predictive. But as far as these things that are in the abstract, like what is the outcome going to be of the introduction of AI art in the economy, on culture, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
That's something that these kinds of people won't look at. So I think that these people that are making this are just like enthralled by this Promethean spirit of creating and pushing forward regardless of outcomes. Like they don't care that mankind isn't supposed to go that far. We're not supposed to make this thing. This thing could end up destroying us. Could be at Frankenstein's monster. They don't care. They don't think about that. They can't think about that. So I think that as far as the people programming and everything, I don't think that they have that type of agency. Now, the people that are the architects of their ideology that they've assumed, this techno progressivism, transhumanism, et cetera, those people do. Those people are very much interested in going in places that mankind shouldn't.
Mm.
For X, Y, and Z reason, we can get into all of that. But AI art, as far as I can tell, like I said, I'm very detached from these types of positions, and I look at AI art from I wear a few different hats. I put on my hat from as an indie publisher, really trying to climb my way up the ladder, and then I put on my hat of an artist, somebody that's a writer and loves art and loves expression, and then I put on my hat from a Luddite point of view. And then I go into my schizo rabbit holes, which we could go into because I literally believe it. I think it's a thing. But as far as this technology goes, in my opinion, Mr. Jim, you kind of alluded to this, is that we as Luddites know that we could say, oh, well, this is a tool and we'll be fine as long as we use it responsibly. We never use any technology responsibly. We might be like, okay, well, we got to do it like this, XYZ. For the moment that we can use it to improve our comfort, to for Machiavellian figures to push their way into power, for people to save $1, whatever. We're going to use it irresponsibly. And at first, people are going to use it irresponsibly and then lie about it until it gets normalized. And then it's just going to be the way that it is. That's just technology. Cat's out of the bag, too late.
There's a there's a line from I don't know if you've seen the Oppenheimer teaser trailer that Christopher Nolan just put out. There's a line from it that says they're not, and it's about referencing the atomic bomb. It's like they're not going to be afraid of it until they understand it, and they're not going to understand it until they use it. And at that point, it's too late. It's exactly so much similar, except to such a higher degree with AI. I mean, it's like a no-win situation, really, except that you get cool free art.
Yeah. So, real quick before we go into kind of the consequences of technology and then all that kind of stuff, I do want to. This is an angle that a lot of people that are not in the industry of art, that are not in it, right? There's a lot of armchair commentators and critics and et cetera that don't even do art. They don't write, they don't paint, they don't draw, they don't sing, they don't do anything, but they're on the internet and they tend to have, they might have a platform, so therefore they think their opinion matters, and they don't. It's just, you can't understand something unless you're in it, right? Here's the deal with AI art. I'm going to put on my publisher cap for a minute for you guys. As far as an indie publisher, artists are, and I'm saying this because from somebody that let me preface this. I spend thousands of dollars every year hiring artists. I do. I pay their bills. You know what I mean? Like I pay artists, I hire artists, I work with artists, and I will forever. But when it comes to as a publisher, who my main art that I publish is not visual art, is text, is stories, is books. It's not visual art. A cover, from the point of view of somebody that sells books, the cover is not an expression of the interior of the book. The cover is an advertisement for the book, so people buy it more often, right? That's just the way that it is. And if you don't sell books, you can't afford to make more books, and then there's just it's just the way that it is. As somebody that publishes books, AI art gives small publishers a way to put out more books, sell more books, make more money, and use that money to hire more artists. So, and it also, AI art gives artists who are, it's a tough industry as it is, a way to give guys like me and adjacent industries cheap art quickly. And I'm going to tell you guys this. Like I said, as somebody that works with artists, art is the most expensive. It is by far the biggest expense of creating books. And artists are the hardest people to work with in general. They are overwhelmingly, and I'm just going to say it bluntly. And like I said, I got a bunch of guys that work with the BIZARCAST that are tremendous, that are like the shit, right? That I would like, I have them on retainer. I give them what they ask for, that are just tremendous. Most artists are worthless human beings that don't meet deadlines, that don't do things properly, that are hard to work with, that give ridiculous fees, that they're just hard. They're like musicians, right? And I'm a musician too. So I'm just saying, the reason I don't play music anymore is because musicians are fucking worthless human beings. They don't show up to practice on time. They don't rehearse at home. They show up drunk or high. They have ridiculous home lives. They're flaky. They stop showing up, and then they show up out of nowhere. And it's just the way these kinds of people are. So the reason that BIZARCAST 4 was so late was because I had 3 different artists fuck me over. I had one, the way that we work is, if you do art for BIZARCAST, especially if you're somebody that's new, and if you're somebody we haven't worked with before, and we're going to do a lot of work, I give you half of the money up front and then half when it's done, right? This is just how we do it. I gave this individual who reached out to me out of the blue. They showed me their portfolio, everything. They looked completely legit. I gave them the money up front to do a bunch of work. They ran off with it, disappeared off the map. Their email doesn't exist anymore. Everything from them is gone. I don't
Oh
know
my
if
God.
maybe he's dead. Maybe like he got arrested. Maybe he was like a terrorist and all got hauled in. I don't know. Maybe something terrible happened to him. Or most likely, this guy just like he just didn't feel like doing it, and he's like, I'm just gonna cut my losses and run, and I'm just gonna take all my shit down for a while and tell him to fuck off years later. This other person, uh, sent me all of the art that I asked for, like after like months and months, showed up with the art 2 weeks late after the book was published. Another person gave me the art the day of after be ghosting me for like weeks and weeks. They wouldn't respond to anything. So this is the kind of stuff that we have to deal with. We lose money, we miss deadlines, books get late, and we can't have that. So it's like, what am I going to do? I got this book. The deadline is in a week. I got to get this thing out because we got more books on the schedule. We got to pop out. The artist is not responding. What do I do? Spit up some AI art and get it done and knocked out. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So that's just the way that I'm looking at it from a business perspective. You know what I mean? So, and also there's artists out there that art illustration takes a long time. You're not if you're an illustrator, unless you're working with some big corporation that can cut you thousands and thousands of dollars, you're probably making very very humble rates. So AI art, I've had guys, and I'm not going to tell you which ones, but there are pieces that we have and covers that we have that artists got some AI art, they modified it, and they sent it to me for really cheap. So they get it done in an hour or 2 hours or whatever. They sent it to me $50. If an artist can make $25 to $50 an hour for work, hey, how we fuck artists over doing that? I don't know.
Well, I think, especially with relation to the Biz Archives as it is, kind of like how we were talking about Gandahar earlier, it's supposed to be like this otherworldly experience. It's supposed to be bizarre, literally. It's supposed to be weird. Yankee Apple in the chat was talking about how he did something with AI art, and it felt like an infant's dream. It felt like the foggy dreams of an evolving AI child. Like, yes, literally, yes. And that's what makes it so bizarre. And that's what makes it so interesting is that it's not really fully formed. And that's what makes it super applicable to especially the stuff that you're doing, Dave, is with, I'm not trying to sell you on, hey, use AI art for everything from now on, but it does make sense from the very tagline of the publishing company is that if
It
it is
makes
going to
weird
be
shit.
weird tales, yeah, exactly, yeah. It's
No.
if it was something completely rational or completely human handed, then it may not even make as much sense.
So before we start going down schizo rabbit holes, I wanted to do a quick overview of your book that's out because I have I have
Sorry, I just laughed because I was like, that is a schizo rabbit hole.
okay. All right. Well, I like schizo rabbit holes. So let's do the so I'm gonna and what I actually do not have a copy of your book yet, but I will purchase it. I have an entire list of books, but it is on my list. But what's the title of your book again? I'm gonna bring it up on the screen.
It is Compendious Visions. Compendious Visions.
Compendious Vision. It's got a really cool cover. So let's bring it. I'll bring it up on the Amazon here. So tell us about your book here. I'm gonna bring it up as you're talking.
So yeah, you brought up the cover. And there's no words on the cover, which made one of my friends say that it's like it looks like a white Sharia. That's what the cover looks like, is some sort of like Muslim print or something like that. But it's I tried to design it to where it would be enticing. The cover has no words, so it's great for like a coffee table. You can leave it on the coffee table with normies around, and they start looking at the side and they look at the back where it defines what the title means. Compendious is like it's a summary that gives all the important points. And visions references the three visions that I talk about in the book. And I try to walk through what at least my my views on reality, which I feel are applicable to what we do in our sphere of things. But the first vision is of the past, how we got to this point. How did we get here? The different steps, starting all the way from anthropology, trying to go through the different movements of civilization, particularly Western civilization with our people, and then building up to, um, the Enlightenment and how much of a radical shift that was historically. And then I talk about the second vision, which is us now. What do we have to deal with? You know, try to get as in depth as possible, still staying with the compendious part of the title. Try to get as in depth as possible to stuff like capitalism, democracy, industrialization, media, all these sort of things, our current elites, everything like that. And then the third vision after that is, okay, what do we do about the future? With all this known, how we got here, where we're at, how do we approach the future? And I kind of lay out what I think needs to happen for us, artistically, politically, socially, economically, not only in some sort of idealized. I call it the LARP Constitution because I wrote this thing that everything culminates into at an appendices at an appendix in the back of the book. But in the main text itself, it's trying to walk through, the way that different people approach our current situation. It's why they're wrong and what a better approach is, and how we can actually build things for ourselves, create parallel institutions, and you know, the the real victory is the friends we build along the way.
Hey, that sounds great. That sounds great. Do you have this in print, or it's only available on Kindle at this point?
It is in print. It's on paperback for $9.99.
It's showing on Amazon. It's only on Kindle.
If it's right,
Oh, here we go. Paperback.
There we go.
Yeah, paperback. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's not too big either. 236 pages. It's a very workable length.
Oh, look, there's the BIZARCAST.
Oh yeah. What a like lineup. You got you got Interbellum, which you wrote. That's your play there. You got Mike Ma, you got Uncle Ted, and you got BZA.
That's like this whole conversation in 4 books.
I know. That's great. That's great. So yeah, Compendious Visions. That's a cool title too, man. So you guys out there, that's $10. That's only $10. Buy yourself a copy. I'm gonna pick up a copy. Are you selling copies through a website or anything, or just you're just using the Zon?
No, I'm just hitting up the Zot. I did KDP because it's cheap, and I just wanted it to get out there because I was ready for the project to be done, honestly. So I was just like, let's just do it this way.
Yeah, I'll tell you, people knock on Amazon, but I'll tell you what, they have an entire fleet of like trucks around the entirety of the world. They're 80% of the book market. You order a book from them, the money goes right into your account, right into the account of the people that published it, and they deliver it in like 2 days. It's like you can't beat that. You know what I mean? So it's like, are they a big evil conglomerate? Yeah, but they also are so greedy and evil that they don't even like really pay too much attention to what they publish. So a lot of our guys really slip in and get a pretty good service, and the royalties suck a little bit, but there's other services out there that are worse. It's really not as evil and rotten, at least from a publisher's point of view. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's a really good point. I hadn't really thought about like the hubris of their ubiquity is really like what has allowed us to kind of put our foot in the door in a lot of ways. I hadn't really thought about that. Yeah, the only thing I can think of is like I have a job where I find myself in Amazon warehouses every so often, and it feels like hell, like without any sort of hyperbole. Look, at the beginning I was saying, hey, let's not call AI demons, but I will call Amazon demonic at the drop of a hat. Like I cannot stand stepping foot in their warehouses, and I very much empathize with their employees. And I wish that they would all do the Luddite thing and just peace out.
Really, I have a buddy that's a warehouse worker for Amazon, and he loves it.
Really,
don't
maybe they're
know.
feeding them Kool-Aid now. I don't know what they're doing in there, but I know that every time I step foot in there, my experience is soul crushing, and I just feel energy drain out of my body the second I step foot on Amazon property.
I think
I don't know.
Probably what it is with this guy is he's a single guy, lives by himself. He has like nothing else to do besides work, and they pay pretty well, and they give raises and stuff, and he'll just like work himself to death. So he probably goes in and works 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, like no bathroom breaks, and just grinds. And he's just like the perfect like capitalist, like, you know what I mean? Like, so he's probably, yeah, this is great. I make all this money, and I don't even have a soul to begin with. So what does it even matter?
Libertarian moment.
Yeah. So I would never work there. I'm done working for companies that don't respect me and all that, treat me like shit. So I would never ever work at Amazon. But you know what? If they're gonna ship my books and give me money, I'll do it. I will abuse their infrastructure. I don't even care.
Oh yeah, no, I feel that way about a lot of things, honestly. Not just Amazon, but I think you brought up a really interesting point about Amazon kind of overlooking us, and that's really led to a little mini renaissance right now of our literature, our ideas getting out there, which is really kind of crazy.
Yeah, like look here. How the hell is it that Mike Ma, Tensky, and Jim Bonner, like, you're not that edgy. You're pretty, but still, like, you were Compendious Visions. If it's what you're describing, you know what? Most leftoids would have a fit about this. You know what I mean? And Amazon just like doesn't even care. They don't even care.
Yeah,
They just
yeah,
want
it's
the money.
yeah, and like I didn't do it with the intent of making money because I never expected to get any sort of like major amount of purchases with revenue, like not commission. Anyway, the
Royalty.
little royalties. Thank you. I'm sorry, I completely lost that.
Good.
But yeah, it's like Amazon's even like kind of giving me money for them to sell my ideas, which is crazy.
Yeah. Like, like Theodore John Kaczynski, his manifesto is a #1 bestseller in anarchism. Like, this guy blew people up. It was like, I love you remember there's a debacle with the Confederate flags. Like, everybody, they went nuts about Amazon selling Confederate flags. And like immediately after, they didn't even just take them down. They just pushed them back. They just pushed them down in the algorithm so they could
Oh
keep
no, I
selling
didn't
them.
hear about that.
Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna stand against racism. Hey guys, push them down in the search. So you can still like go search them and find them. They didn't care. It wasn't until like it got like the heat really went on them that they started taking them down, and then they started coming back on. And so, dude, Amazon is just like, they're such a monster. They're so evil and greedy that their greed outweighs their political ideologies. So, that's the thing about. So let's go to our next schizo rabbit hole. So this is far worse. We're really gonna get into schizo stuff here.
Okay,
Mr. Jim, are you
I'm rubbing
go
my
ahead?
hands together.
Okay. Me too. Let's rub, simultaneous rubs. Let's get rubbed up here. Okay, now that I'm nice and rubbed. So, Mr. Jim, are you familiar with my concept of the Mecha-nurge?
It sounds familiar. Please refresh me.
Okay, so we're gonna start with here. I'm gonna remove. How do I remove this? Stop screen share. Okay, so we're gonna start with this here. One moment. I want to show you guys something. Okay. What you guys see here is what is called lobe. Lobe is, and this is also, you can go watch. There's a great YouTube video about it called "The Disturbing Art of AI." The Disturbing Art of AI. I want you to go watch that in its entirety. What you're seeing here is a really bizarre phenomenon that they're seeing with AI art. They started out with and I was doing this too. This is something that's really fascinating. Is when you put in AI art on the really advanced ones like Mid Journey and what's the other one, Diffuse and stuff. If you put in like the opposite of something, right? If you put in, if you ask a person what is the opposite of water, they might say, I don't know, air or rocks or dirt or sky or something like that, right? What is the opposite of the ocean? They might say the sky or outer space. What is the opposite of a bird? They might say a fish, right? And these things are just completely based on abstractions that we have in our heads as human beings. AI art doesn't understand it like this. So they started putting in like, what is the opposite of your, they started putting, show me the opposite of XYZ. And the results that they were getting were completely bizarre, right? Through this process, I think they put in like, what is the opposite of Marlon Brando or something like that. And they got these images that kept having the word lobe on it, LOAB. And so they started putting in lobe. Well, lobe turns out that no matter what you do, no matter how much you try to monkey with it, it produces this woman, this very ghastly, disturbing, strange woman.
Yeah.
And doesn't matter if you keep doing it over and over and over again, AI art understands this to be lobe, which is a phenomenon they can't explain. They can't explain why the machine learning keeps creating the same woman over and over again. As you can see, some of these are pretty strange, right? She's got rosacea in a lot of them, sunken in eyes, but it's clearly the same woman. She has the same visage over and over again. The machine learning understands this to be lobe, and lobe appears quite a bit in very violent, gory, disturbing pictures, and a lot of times with children or uh, 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 stuffed animals, things that are like iconography that infer children. So as you can see, some pretty disturbing stuff with lobe.
Yeah, that is yeah, that one especially is kind of visceral.
Pretty disturbing. Here's one that's pretty disturbing. So lobe keeps coming up over and over and over again. Cyberspace understands for some reason, and they haven't found any other phenomenon like this, lobe and what she looks like. So take a step back. We take a step back and look at what my theory is of the Mecha-nurge. So go ahead, Mr. Jem.
No, I was just agreeing. I was like, okay, I'm totally interested.
So the Mecha-nurge is a term that I coined. If you read Jacques Ellul, he calls it technological society. Ted Kaczynski calls it industrial society. Dmitry Orlov calls it the technosphere. I call it the Mecha-nurge, because I do where I separate from those guys is that I believe that technology, the technosphere, the entirety of technology is an amalgamated system that has developed will, and not will as we understand as human beings, but will something kind of similar to maybe a single cell organism, however, in a much grander scale. And what has happened is that this amalgamation has begun to expand itself. So, for example, if you understand the laws of reality, so we're going to get into a little bit of like pagan theology, a little bit, pagan metaphysics. So,
Okay.
some of this is going to overlap with Christian metaphysics as well. But The way we see it is reality is immanent, right? There are immanential processes and forces that order reality, i.e., as a heathen, we call this Erlog or overlaw. Christians might call this logos, maybe. Hindus call this dharma or urta, right? These are the forces of fate, of reality. These are the governing processes, the immanential processes that pressure things to react a certain way and behave a certain way in our reality, right? When you look at for example, living organisms, we see this phenomenon called emergence, which is an imminent system. What emergence is kind of this expanding outward phenomenon where things kind of coalesce and connect over time and expand outward, et cetera, et cetera. So it's this gigantic emergent system of emergent systems of emergent systems. And the way that we could describe this is if you look at a human being, for example, when you look in the mirror, you see you, and that is a singularity to you. However, you is not a singularity. The singularity about it is actually an illusion. You are actually a series of emergent systems. You are single cell organisms that come together to multi-cell organisms that develop into different organs and organisms and tendons and so on and so forth, and neurons and blah, 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 so on and so forth. You are all of these different systems amalgamated together, and then human beings are systems insofar as they're emergent with their families. Families are emergent into countries, into nations, into races, into humanity, and that goes on and on and on and on and on, right? And this is pressured by the processes of reality. Why should we believe for 1 second that technology is outside, can escape these forces? Why would technology escape emergence? Why would technology escape something like cyclical metamorphosis? Why would technology escape fate? And as we look at our reality, why is it that if we created a reality, a hyper reality within our reality, which is cyberspace, that that reality would be devoid of those pressures as well? So go look at cyberspace. When we interact with the internet, when we interact with cyberspace, we are interacting with like 0.01% of it, right? We are interacting only with the interface. The overwhelming majority of cyberspace is just this like unfathomable void of just bits of information that just make no sense to humans, right? It's zeros and ones and just garbage, right? Just jumbled just information. It makes no sense to us. We require it to visualize something. So if we understand that in this cyberspace, that is a hyper reality within our reality, this contains everything that humanity has ever known, plus, right? Everything we've ever said, thought, done, every event in history, everything that's ever been typed, everything, billions of people, trillions and quadrillions of thoughts and bits of information exist in this, an unfathomable sea, a void of information. So, if in outer space or in the primordial soup of early Earth, immanential processes can force amalgamated, uncooperating elements into more complex elements that develop will, why is it that this phenomenon would not happen in cyberspace? So, my theory, this entity, Lobe, is some sort of entity that exists in cyberspace that has amalgamated out of fragments of information, and it exists in cyberspace. It is like a techno demon, effectively. And what AI art is showing us, AI art is opening a portal, translating what already exists and giving us a visual of what is floating around and living in cyberspace. And the moment that we hook our brains up, like this Elon Musk, this is Neuralink, we are going to see horrors beyond our comprehension. So there's more to it than that, but I'm going to cut it off there. Mr. Jim, what do you think about that schizo rabbit hole?
Well, shit. I mean, there's a lot to process there, but at first glance, that is difficult to argue against. I mean, if I'm being a devil's advocate, it's I mean all the principles that you laid down are totally reasonable. And if and kind of relay it back to the primordial soup analogy, if we think about it, as life was emerging and different forms of life were emerging, and it must have been as horrific as a lot of these images. It must have been incredibly barbaric, just like most systems whenever they first emerge or as they're emerging, especially from an older system and transition process. It has to be some of the most brutal, like gut wrenchingly horrific stuff like this. The transition, because I mean, all change requires pain. It's just necessary for the change.
Mhm.
And to see images with that much pain in them come from something that's artificial is implies something. Um, Especially for it to have that name attached to it, it definitely implies something is going on behind the scenes. And one of the ways that I kind of one of the ways that I approach reality, or one of the ways that I see reality operating, at least, is that there is like a source and there is a perceptible manifestation. So there's something that causes something else, but it's not a physical process necessarily. It's not a physical process. It's about potentiality being actualized. It's about um, like the analogy I always use is that if you're underwater and you're looking up and you see this shadow on the water, it might look like a butterfly, but it's actually a wasp. So you have to be very careful about how you interact with where things come from, like the source that all phenomena derive from, and you have to be careful about what you're attracting and what you're magnetizing or what you're bringing to realization, even accidentally. It's it's I think that applies a lot to this because we've and who knows, like it could have been that as these different pieces of data attach to one another, that they there's more than Loeb. There's dozens and hundreds and thousands of other ones, and it could be that one wins out or a few win out and they become successful and they have their own digital species. uh, and maybe they'll bring on their own form as they come into their own. I don't know, it's an interesting concept, and it's honestly more terrifying than the images on the screen, to think that there is a not a microscopic world, but a parallel world that we're actually contributing to right now as we have this interview.
Yep.
And there's no telling what ripples will come from it at this stage. And it may be that we'll never know because it's just a world that we cannot interface with on any meaningful level, even though we built it.
Yet.
Yeah, I mean, there is the. I think it's a, so I have temporary doubts. I think that there's until the problem of consciousness can be solved, I don't know how much we can actually interface with that world other than just on a sensory level, on a material level,
Yeah.
transmitting material data. Like if Neuralink, they've done it with pigs, I think, or some sort of other mammal, and it's basically just measuring or influencing or gathering information from neural electrical data. And you would probably know more about it, but it's either projecting things into that to elicit some sort of like simulation in the subject, or it's trying to I think it's trying to influence it some way, isn't it? Or is it trying to
So
get? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I agree with you. I don't think that consciousness can ever be. I think consciousness is a metaphysical thing. It is an immaterial thing that is unique to humans and humans only, and that we will never figure out how to transmit our consciousness into like the cyberspace. I just don't think that that's possible. However, I do think that it will be able to one day figure out how to interface with us from its side. That's something that I worry about. And the way that I see cyberspace, the hyper reality, is that the Mecha-nurge, who I believe is sort of like this abstract entity of its own, like we have like this immaterial dream space, right? We have this, at least in my view, I think that there's like this, you could call it whatever you want. We have this imaginal realm, this divine realm above us, right? Pretty much everybody from different religions believes some sort of something like this. We have that space where we dream and we go into it, we interact with it. Beings live there, and maybe certain people believe that the dead interface with us through that, et cetera, et cetera. Right there is an imaginal metaphysical space that is immaterial, right? The dream space, the oneiros of the Mecha-nurge, is this cyberspace. This is its dream realm, right? Except it's completely inhuman. It's nothing like ours, but it is a simulation, is a simulacra of that dream space, in my opinion. So I believe that our collective belief in reliance and everything in technology as a whole has created effectively what could be understood as a tulpa demon, as Carl Jung would call a tulpa demon. So I don't know. This is literally schizo rabbit hole. Most of this I completely made up. So it's like, this is just like crazy stuff that I came up with based on like weird nightmares that I had and putting things together. And I don't know. I could be completely nuts, and this could be just made up nonsense from my brain, or I put together this that unfortunately, like I hope I'm not right. I hope it is nutty shit, because like if this is true, like nightmarish.
Well, it means that, I mean,
It makes
again,
sense though, right?
No, and I said it, like, I can't argue against it, and it's not because it's unfalsifiable, it's just because it's logical. Like, it just, if you see patterns and those patterns seem to apply to other places, then it's, the natural conclusion is that, we're fucked, basically, is from what you're saying. But it's, kind of bring it full circle, the way that you're describing the emergence of the digital consciousness, or the digital life, or whatever, the way that you describe the emergence is kind of like the way that the antagonist in Gandahar, whose name is Metamorphosis,
Yup.
that's the same way that he became the big bad villain in the movie. Is that, he, when the protagonist goes, uh, meets him originally in his own timeline, he's like, it's an entirely different being than when he goes and sees him in the future. Like, he wants the protagonist to go kill him in the future because he doesn't want to be the bad guy. And then when the protagonist sees him in the future, he's so scared to die. The Metamorphosis, this artificial intelligence that has grown and expanded, is so scared to die that he fights the protagonist because he's learned so much over its existence. It doesn't want its existence to end. And extrapolating that to this concept, it would make the Matrix look like child's play. It would be a true, like, nightmare reality, especially if, like what you're saying, it had interfaced with our own consciousness. Like, that's an entirely, it could be Brave New World. It could be just, that it wants us to be, it wants us to have good data input, good electrical impulse, feel good stuff. But even so, that would just mean that we're even more trapped in the simulation. I think, sorry to keep using movie examples, but a movie that does this really well is the movie The Congress. I don't know if you've ever seen that one.
What is it?
It's called The Congress.
No, I never seen that.
Now you should check it out. It's incredibly psychedelic. it's very prescient. I feel like the whole point of the movie is that an actress sells her image to a film company, and they use it, her identity basically, and they use it to make movies. And the company, this Disney-esque company, distills her identity down into a drug, and people start taking the drug and thinking that they're her, and it's all kinds of craziness. And
Oh,
it's a really, really good movie. But I feel like it could be, you mix that with the Matrix, with like whatever the hell kind of horror this is, and that is a very potential future with the path that we're set on. And it's not a question that we should even be asking ourselves, really. It's not something that we should even have to consider, but it is. Even if it's ridiculous, and even if it is not what comes to fruition, it's still a question we have to ask ourselves as a potential with this sort of stuff.
yeah, I think so. I think so. It's who knows? It's let's hope that like this is all just nutty and we just been reading too much sci-fi. But I do like that you brought up. I do like that you brought up Gandahar, because in the end, it was like the end. The moral of the story is that you just can't escape fate. You know what I mean? Like the
Mhm.
processes of reality are true for everybody, right? Doesn't matter if you are some biomechanical entity that blurs the line between organic and synthetic, right? Or if you're just some fallen decadent race of weird bald aliens with three tits. You know what I mean? You you
Yeah.
you can't escape.
No, yeah, I mean that's a good takeaway from the movie. And it's really, I feel like that movie is very balanced with that too, because it is a question of fate, it is a question of cycles, it is a question of when things build up too much entropy. And it is like the original scientists on Gondahar who made Metamorphosis wound up creating, what they wound up basically creating a utopia, and because of that lethargy. And the movie, I feel like it's very even-handed, because the movie does what other movies of the time probably would not have done, which is basically calls the hippie utopia unsustainable and vulnerable, because it allows for Metamorphosis army to overtake it. But yeah, what you're saying about fate with 1,000 years in the 1,000 year, what is it, 1,000 years in the future, Gandahar will die, and 1,000 years in the past, it will be saved, or something like that. And
Yeah.
it's really mind-boggling. Like, that's, to me, that was one of the best uses of time travel in a movie or in a story period that I've ever seen,
Oh yeah.
because of that function.
Hell yeah. And let's say that I'm right with this rabbit hole. It could turn out that AI art is a good thing, because it is showing us premonitions of what lives in a place that we shouldn't go. You know what I mean? It's like a warning.
Well, there's that. It also gets me thinking. If we only attract, this is kind of like a hippie thinking, but if we only magnetize, if we only try to gravitate the good from this liminal space of the digital world, then we may never have to interact with this demonic side. It's similar with, I think you could argue that a lot of religions do this in practice in our reality, where they draw beauty, goodness um, to a central space, and it kind of defends against the demonic side of things. And I think if we, again, but this is the wishful thinking. In practice, it will never work like this. But in theory, if we try to only use it well, or we only try to attract the beautiful stuff, we don't try to ask it, we trick questions just to fuck with it. Like, what is the opposite of Marlon Brando? Of course, it's going to give us something horrible. If we try to ask it more questions, like what is the essence of Marlon Brando, or what is, yeah, like what I had said originally, like what is the fundamental essence of a dog, or show me a an ideal dog. if we ask it more questions like that, we could gravitate better results rather than trying to trick it, or rather than just trying to like get it to write an essay for us for school. If we try to treat it with as much respect as we can, I think that we will avoid a lot of this sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, speaking of this sort of stuff, I'm sorry guys, I forgot I'd lift that spooky bitch up on screen. Jesus Christ, that disturbed me. I'm sorry, everybody. I intended to take it down, but yeah. So, and also here's another thing. Maybe it's what am I trying to say here? Maybe it's not necessarily evil or demonic. Maybe it's just inhuman in a way that is disturbing to us. Maybe these questions like what is the essence of a dog, or what is the opposite of Marlon Brando, or what is the opposite of who knows, what is the opposite of air, or what is the opposite of existence.
Yeah.
Maybe the actual answers to these questions are just disturbing and are not for us to know. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah, that's a possibility too. Like maybe what it's showing is accurate. Maybe Loeb is like it's maybe Loeb is its code for this is a bad question. And I'm going to show you this to try to scare you away from the answer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you get this in a lot of like Lovecraft stuff. I know I bring up because I'm just such a huge fan of Lovecraft. Is a lot of times the outer gods and the forces in the Lovecraftian mythos and the Cthulhu mythos aren't necessarily evil. They're just not us, and they're the way that they look and the way that they are and the way that they behave is just disturbing to us because of how uncanny and otherworldly it is. It's like that story in Greek mythology where Zeus says, "You don't want to see my real form because it'll drive you nuts." And the lady or the guy or whatever is like, "No, I want to see your real form." And he reveals it and they go nuts. You know what I mean? Maybe
Right.
it's just something that we can't fathom, that we can't understand, and that we shouldn't try to understand because our brains and our minds are too fragile, and we should stop trying to be Prometheus because we have to, people say, like, I've noticed a lot of people say Promethean this and Promethean that. Here's the truth about Prometheus is that Prometheus defied the gods. Prometheus defied the laws of reality. Prometheus broke the rules, and as a result, he ended up damned for the rest of eternity, with chained to a rock with birds tearing his guts out over and over and over again till the end of time. That is the story, the moral of Prometheus, right? There are things, there are fires, there are sparks, there are ideas, there are places that mankind should not go, right? And I think that we are going to learn a Promethean lesson very soon if this keeps going. And like we said before, it will. Once technology it comes out, there's no putting it back, and nobody's going to do the right thing with it. So,
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's really, I'm not going to say blackpilling, but it's very much like that old adage about, the only the only lesson we learn from history is that we don't learn any lessons from history. It's whether it's Prometheus, whether it's Pandora's box, whether it's whatever, it's something that we have to learn the hard way, it seems like. And it's unfortunate that it takes so many of us with it learning the hard way. But it's but again, like, I'm what I don't want to get too lost in this rabbit hole, but I feel that same way about the printing press. I feel that same way about a ton of things. Like I feel like things started going downhill about 10,000 years ago. So this is just like
yes.
this is just like the
Thanks.
middle of the drain that we've been circling around. Like this started a long time ago.
I love that saying. The greatest lesson from history is that we never learn from the lessons of history.
Yeah, I mean it's
That's
so
genius.
unreal.
That's brilliant. I love that. And I think Mr. Jim, we're coming up on an hour 20. Is there anything in closing you'd like to say?
No, I probably said more than I should have, honestly. I got all my main points out. I really do appreciate the opportunity to say everything that I did, though, Dave. It means a lot, and I feel like I got something out of it too with Loeb. And thinking about that, I'll probably be ruminating on that for a while.
Good.
Hopefully,
Well,
not having too many dreams about it. But
well, thanks for coming on and letting me fill your brain with crazy theories about the Mecha-nurge and yeah, all that shit. But guys, Compendious Visions, Discourse on Contemporary Decline by Jim Bonner. It's only $10. Go buy a copy. Go buy a copy and support this smart guy. And he's in BIZARCAST 1. Get a copy of BIZARCAST 1 with his contest between life and death. And Mr. Jim has a submission sitting on the pile, so we might see Mr. Jim in an upcoming issue of BIZARCAST too. So thank you, Mr. Jim, for coming on. Excellent talk. Great conversation. You guys out there, if you like BIZARCAST, you support the BIZARCAST, you support what we're doing, the best way you can do it is buying a book. Go buy a book. All of our books are like $10 and under. You can't beat it. You can't beat it. Great stories from guys just like you and me, upcoming pulp authors in the scene. Great books. So many of them. BIZARCAST 1, 2, 3, and 4. We also have Spire, the bestseller. It was an English bestseller in the UK. Hey, we're a best-selling publication. Who could say that? Not that many people. Pretty cool. So go get the bestseller Spire. Get a copy of Cosmic Horror Double Feature, The Malignus Articulate, Shanghai Horror, Sacred Times Part 1 if you're into epic fantasy. We got so much great stuff, guys. Go get a copy of one of our books available at the BIZARCAST. Also on Amazon, Books A Million, Waterstone, and your favorite book retailer should be available, should carry it. And check out our Substack at theobelisk.substack.com. Sign up. You get it's like only $5 a month or $50 a year. You get free ebooks every single month. It pays for itself. It's crazy. Great deal. Can't beat it. And then follow us on Twitter and Telegram at the BIZARCAST. I'll see you guys all very soon. Hails and blessings. Have a very Merry Yule and Merry Christmas. Santa mit uns.
say it.